Let's chat about curriculum hits and misses for this last school year. Stick around because I'm going to dig into it. I am Aileen. This is Homeschool with the Clarks, formerly Life as Aileen. I changed my name recently, so it's the same person, just a different YouTube channel name. My kiddos this school year were in 6th, 4th, and 1st grade. Plus we had a toddler in the mix just along for the ride. Today's video is part of an open collaboration with Abby at Rooted in Rest and Jessica at the Waldock Way. So make sure you check out the playlist if you want to see other people share about their hits and misses for the year as well. So I'm going to start with our hits and then I'll dig into our misses. The first hit was the Blossom and Root novel studies. We did their LA level 4 as a family. We didn't utilize all of the bits and pieces, but we did utilize the literary analysis piece, obviously the novels. We did some of their copy work and some of the open-ended questions. And that was a huge hit for our family. We did not get to every book. And there were a couple of books that my kids did not absolutely love. And I'm going to do a whole video on our favorites and least favorite novels that we read this year. But overall, it was just such a great year of snuggling together on the couch and reading good books. And even some of them had movies. And it was the theme was adventure. And so she had all of these movie suggestions throughout the curriculum. And we love a good Friday night pizza and a movie night. So we did a lot of movies. And overall, it was just a really, really fun addition to our year. I felt like it covered what I wanted it to cover. I added it in specifically because I told my 6th grader he didn't have to have assigned reading this year and that we would just read books that I wanted him to read together as a family. And it checked those boxes and introduced us to some new authors that we really enjoyed. The next hit for us was new to us curriculum, and I brought it in specifically for my 4th grader. It was sequential spelling. We just started with level 1, and it is kind of like a OG, I don't know if it's considered 100% Orton Gillingham. I always say that wrong. OG reading spelling method, but it follows kind of those patterns. So she learned how to spell in spelling patterns, and we did it just on a whiteboard. It did come with a workbook that we didn't end up using, but it was just super quick and fast. And I saw her spelling improve this year. I wish we had gotten to it more often. We only ended up getting to it 2 to 3 times a week. So we did not get through level 1. We're going to continue it just next year. And I actually ended up adding in my 1st grader, and my 6th grader joined in too, and he made that his cursive practice, and he would just write in cursive the words, but there were a couple words that he didn't know how to spell correctly. So I just felt like it was a huge hit for our whole family. It was teacher intensive. It's not a workbook I could just pass off, but I saw results and it was relatively quick. The next hit for us was Draw Then Write. If you watched any of my individual grade curriculum picks at the beginning of last year, I chose Draw Then Write for my 1st grader just because I wanted her to get used to writing sentences and using descriptive words. It's an Evan Moore workbook. I bought it secondhand from Facebook Marketplace, and it was a huge hit. It was her favorite thing to do every single day, so much so that my 4th grader was like, well, I want to do this too. And so I got her the 3rd to 5th grade level, and she did it as well. And it was just such a huge hit. They loved it. The drawings were so cute. It was you worked on drawing a different animal for 3 days, and each day you would do the drawing, and then it would have you either fill in the blanks with a word bank, and then at the end it would build to writing your own sentence. And she just loved it. And I saw her writing grow and her confidence in drawing grew. And it was just a fun, easy thing that I could let her go do by herself completely independently. She didn't really need my help. I would say the only time you probably would have a child needing help is if they weren't reading yet. I think that an early reader could still probably do the first, I think it's 1st to 3rd, 4th to 6th. There's 2 different workbooks. The earlier level workbook, you probably could do it, but you may need to help them read some of the words. Every once in a while, she struggled with a word and I told her what it said, but it was just such a fun, easy little workbook. I wish that they had one for every grade because yeah, it kind of stinks. There's only the 2 workbooks for all of elementary. And I feel like if they could come up with different things to draw, which I'm sure they could easily have one for every grade level like Evan Moore has for so many other workbooks. You know, they make tons and tons of workbooks. So that was a huge hit for us. Another one that was also an Evan Moore workbook was Reading Comprehension Fundamentals. So for my 6th grader, he really still needed some work on that as far as being able to read something and then understand it enough to be able to answer questions. I wanted him to be able to start being able to read something and pull from it and get used to the idea of writing about it. And that was a huge hit for us. We didn't finish the workbook, and I never intended for us to. I just kind of pulled bits and pieces from it, but there was like nonfiction writing, fiction, historical fiction, scientific type of papers that were easy enough for him to read. There was one on like solar power, and you know, he was more interested in it than I thought he would be. I thought it was going to be, and I said as much, that it was going to be like kind of dry and boring, but I wanted him to do it. He actually seemed to enjoy the reading passages. They weren't very long. They were like either a paragraph or a full page, sometimes 2 pages, but they gave specific guidelines on what to look for in the paper to then be able to have a discussion. He did need a lot of help from me, so it wasn't something that he really did independently until we got towards the end of the year. I did sit with him and kind of talk through his answers and helped him look for like the buzzwords that they noted in their explanation section in the paper. And it was well done. I highly recommend it if you need a kiddo to work on reading comprehension. And, you know, if you have a more independent-minded child, they may be able to do it by themselves, but my kiddo definitely needs me to like body double with him and be next to him when he's working on something that he really needs to focus on. I would say it was a hit, even though I'm going to make changes with it next year, was Curiosity Chronicles. We switched. Last year we used History Quest. This year we used Curiosity Chronicles. We did their snapshots of ancient history. I really enjoyed the way that the audiobook was done. We would listen to the audiobook. I would have my oldest follow along and read. And then we did like the workbook pages and the discussion questions. And it was really easy and simple to do. So I'd say that's why it was a hit. We completed the whole first year of Curiosity Chronicles. We did all of the chapters. I call that a win. I am going to change things around next year just so that I can find a way to add in some more projects, because we didn't really do a ton of projects, but I'll talk about that in another video. But that was a hit for us, Curiosity Chronicles. Yay! So you're probably waiting for my misses, because I know I love to hear about people's misses. These misses aren't against any specific company. They just stopped working or didn't work for our family. Before I move on to misses, I just want to ask you to go ahead and hit that like button if you have been liking this video. The first miss was Zearn. We used Zearn for a couple of years. If you're not familiar, it's an online math program. It's completely free. I originally transitioned my kids to Zearn because I have a kiddo who has a writing disability called dysgraphia, and I wanted them to have a break from having to write out all of their problems because their numbers were backwards and it was causing more stress than needed and kind of delaying learning the math skills because of that. But this year, that same child really started to get frustrated with Zearn and frustrated with the way that it's set up, because even if it just goes very slow and it breaks things down a lot, which is really good for some kids, but a more math-minded kid might get frustrated with how slow it is. And there's no way to like skip anything. So there was some frustration there. And so partway through the year, we stopped using Zearn that was my 4th grader. And then I ended up having to supplement with my 6th grader. We ended up supplementing with IXL. We used their online platform and their workbook because they weren't covering things fully in some areas. And I just wanted to make sure he was really prepared for 7th grade and then going into pre-algebra in 8th grade. So we did end up having to supplement. So it was kind of a miss for us, unfortunately. We really loved Zearn last year, but this year it just wasn't as great for us. So that was a miss. Our next miss was Real Science Odyssey Physics. I was so excited to do this with my kids. It's not something that I have a ton of experience with. I do remember taking physics in high school and thinking it was really interesting, but I don't have a lot of like personal knowledge. So I was excited to be able to have this great scripted program to just dig in with them. We did use their astronomy the year before and really enjoyed it, but physics was a huge bust for us. We ended up dropping it like after the first month of school, and it was supposed to be a year-long program. So that was a bummer. And then I struggled all year with what science to do with my kids. I think I'm figuring it out for next year, but it was a miss. You know, you want things to work and they don't. So this is one that I found on Rainbow Resource that I was very excited about because it was inexpensive and it seemed really simple and that it was going to be this huge win for us. And it just was not. And that was Art with a Purpose, or sometimes it's called Art Pack. And basically it was like just one workbook for art, and it's by grade level, and they have like different types of paper and different art projects built in. But my kids hated it. Like, they hated it. They wanted to do each other's. They were fighting over it, but then also refusing. And it just was not a good fit for us. You know, I usually just kind of fill in art here and there where I can when we have time. And, you know, some kids are more artsy than others and want to do more of that. But that one just was not a good fit for our family, unfortunately. The one thing with Art with a Purpose is I could see if I were to go back, perhaps I would have pulled from the different levels and had everyone do the same thing, because I think that's really where the miss was that, well, the first grader was doing this project and the fourth grader was doing that project and the sixth grader was doing another project. He didn't really care about art, so he was more like, meh, why do I have to do this? But the first and fourth grader were like, well, I want to do what she's doing and I want to do what she's doing. And they weren't doing the same thing, and they're very much used to doing it family style. So I think that was a big piece of it. The other part was it was very repetitive. And I'm not saying like repetitive, like you do a whole year of drawing. It was like, we're going to work on shading for the next 5 weeks, or we're going to work on color. Like for the first grader, it was like literally like coloring a coloring page. There was some like cutting and gluing stuff later on. But that was really disappointing. I had watched some other YouTube videos and they said they even like step it back a year because it's like advanced, and maybe I don't know. That was not my experience though, because my first grader was bored to tears with coloring in an apple and trying to use more, it was like, use more pressure to color in a deeper hue. And I guess I could see the benefit of it, but she was just bored to tears. The next miss was part of our hit. So our hit that I talked about, Blossom and Root, their level 4 language arts, was a huge hit for us. A piece of that is the Super Secret Notebook, which is also kind of like artsy crafty. I thought it was going to be more creative writing. And that one, there was nothing wrong with it. We just never got to it and ended up just getting pushed back and back and back and further down the pile. And then I repurposed the art books that I bought for them for something else, and we ended up nature journaling in them, and we just didn't get to it. The last miss was, again, because we didn't get to it, and it's one that we actually really have loved. So it was supposed to be part of our family studies, and I just like forgot about it. I don't even know how it happened, but I forgot about it. And then I remembered like 3 months before the school year ended, and then we started doing it and my kids loved it. And that was traveling the parks from the Waldock Way. The year before that, we did Traveling the States, which is like the 50 states geography study. This one is studying the national parks, and we all loved it. We loved it. If you're familiar with the Waldock Way, she likes to incorporate games into her studies. And so one of her games was bingo. And so I did print out the bingo cards and the little bingo call pieces. And we did play bingo with it a couple of times. But what I ended up doing was putting the little national park bingo pieces into a baggie. And every time we would do it, I would let my kids pull from it. And we would do that national park, but we literally only did like 5 national parks just because I forgot about it. So now I have to decide, are we going to continue and finish the national park study? I also have Traveling the World that we were going to do next year. So now I don't know what I'm going to do. So that was a miss on my part, because I should have known that my kids were going to love that, because they love Traveling the States, and I just didn't get to it. It just slipped my mind because I have, I'm trying to do a million things. Okay, so the last miss for us, and this might be surprising for people who have been around for a while, was IEW. It ended up being a miss. Not their Fix It Grammar, but the theme-based workbooks. So my son has been doing the theme-based workbooks, and then I was going to start doing them with my 4th grader. And it's just so much work. And so I didn't really get to it. She ended up doing the Draw Then Write, and we just really didn't get to her IEW very much at all. I will say that it did get her typing. We worked on it a few times, and she was doing like speech to text and editing her typing, and that was really great. But overall, we just didn't get to it. I didn't prioritize it, and I feel like I need to rethink it next year because it's just a lot of work for me, and I'm not seeing my older child where I need him to be writing wise. And so we're gonna have to figure that out. I don't know. To be determined. So that's it. Those are my hits and misses for this school year. I would love if you could tell me what your hits and misses were, if you've had experience with any of these, and also definitely check out the playlist. And you can join in on the playlist as well. You can post your own video and you can add it to the playlist. Just go to Abby at Rooted in Rest or Jessica at the Waldock Ways pages and look at their videos from this month, and you should be able to add in your video as well. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. So just in between,